Tēnā koutou katoa. Te whare e tū mai nei, tēnā koe. E te pape e waho, tēnā koe. E nā mana, e nā iwi, e nā reo, tēnā koutou katoa. Hello everyone. It's really lovely to be here and to see all of you, and it's always a real treat for me to stand up at these because I think all of you, so I always feel like I'm amongst friends. It's one of those times where you get to speak and you don't feel that nervous because, you know, you're family. It's a real pleasure to have you all here today as well for our annual council meeting. I'm going to talk, probably not as briefly as Alistair has told you, but I'm going to talk a bit about the SBC strategy today, some of what we've worked on over the past year, how we're working, and some of what we're learning, because we think it's important that we share that. But before I get into that, I want to talk to you about what matters to us most, possibly more even than sustainability, and that's all of you. Here you all are, all 99 of you. Over the past year, we have welcomed, hold your breaths, Auckland War Memorial Museum, Genesis Energy, Kantar Insights, who you will also know as Colmar Brunton, KPMG, Loomis, Littleton Port Company, NetLogix, OG Fibre Solutions, Port in a Valley, Ravensdown, Synlait, Tourism Holdings, Transpower, Unilever, AgRecovery, Fairtrade, and the New Zealand Eco-Labelling Trust. So to all of our newest members, welcome. Now we did these maths on the 1st of July, so as you can tell we've added 3 new members since then. And at the 1st of July we had 96 members. 89 of you are full members and we've got 7 associate members. Collectively, you represent $66 billion of turnover. You're more than a quarter of New Zealand's private sector GDP, and you hire around 9% of New Zealand's workforce. And those figures really start to matter when we think about how we cut that Gordian knot that Alistair talked about. You know, I really liked that metaphor of a Gordian knot. Thank you, Alistair. It was a lovely thing to be able to build on. But the idea of a complicated, intractable set of problems without clear cause and effect, without beginnings or endings, problems where an obvious solution in one area probably causes you problems elsewhere, the cobalt issue, and that concerns me because I do own an EV, not a Toyota. That was a difficult conversation. It continues to be a difficult conversation. And problems that we've been trying to solve for some time. And what does that myth tell us? It tells us that we need to be bold, we need to be creative, that to start thinking about the problems differently is important, and actually that we need to start thinking about the solutions differently too. So as the SBC, to do that well, we need to be really strategic. As a small team, we need to have a clear sense of what we're here for and what we should focus on. There are always more sustainability issues. There are always more. If I think about the things that you cover when you're doing your materiality assessments, I imagine for some of you the list can be as long as 60, and we could be working on all of those things. And we could always be doing more for members as well. You've often got great requests and things that we'd love to do. So a good strategy is really important for us. It helps us know when we need to say no. Thinking about problems and solutions differently requires us to try some new things and some new ways of working. It's really lovely to be at Spark today, and who, along with Genesis, one of our other members, is, you know, making their businesses almost fully agile. And we're borrowing some of the thinking from that methodology in the way we work. It's that kind of thing that we need to think about when you're a team of our size. And finally, it almost goes without saying that we're not doing our job if we're not looking ahead, if we're not scanning the horizon for the issues that we are going to need to be working on in the next 2, 3, or even 5 years. So this past year, we worked with the board to get really explicit about our strategy. It starts with the purpose that, for many of you, you would have heard me talk about last year and probably bang on to you about ever since. And really that's this idea that we are here to help businesses to be the best for New Zealand and for the world. Because when it comes down to it, that's pretty much our belief about what you're in this for too. Ultimately, we want sustainability to be mainstream in New Zealand business. Those of us who are into it all know it's just a better way of doing business, and we want our friends and colleagues and other businesses to be doing it too. So the way we work is we use that purpose to create our impact through the SBC way. We want to inspire businesses by creating a community of positive change, supporting members to go further, and celebrating their leadership and success. That's what we're here for. When we think about how we make that way real, we have 4 pillars. One of the knottier questions for us is, how do you mainstream sustainability in a way that's valuable to you, our members, who, by definition, are already doing sustainability? How do we make that valuable for you? And our answer to that is to make sustainability inspirational and aspirational. And we do that by making sure that there are lots of really good stories about successful, sustainable business out there in the world. Not necessarily having to be told by us, but making sure that there are lots of examples for the other businesses who aren't doing sustainability about why you guys are so great and why they should want to be like you. Many of you talk to me about how hard you find it to get your positive sustainability stories into the media or more widely in the world. And in our recent member survey, you told us that profiling your work through events or through presentations or through media was one of the things that you valued most from us. So we worked really hard on that this year. Many of you will have met Renee Graham, our communications manager, who's just gone off on maternity leave. She made it her mission, and I swear she really made it her mission, to get as many of your sustainability stories into media as she could. Renee is an ex-TVNZ journo, and she has a lot of friends in the media. And I started to feel very, very sorry for them. Because she'd come back from her drinks and her dinners, and she'd say, well, I caught up with Corin Dan last night, and I talked to him all about XYZ business and what they're doing on sustainability. And I remember in particular her coming back from one event where she said she'd been so excited that she'd convinced TVNZ to tell the story of the work that Karen's doing at Wellington Zoo with the UN. But I've got to say, I think her persistence really did start to pay off. Shortly after Stuff joined our membership, it gave Renee enough courage to go and pitch the idea of doing a 19-week series on the Sustainable Development Goals, which we think may have been a global first. And that was done in the Sunday Star Times, not in the lifestyle section, not in the sustainability section, in the business section, which was really important. And 25 of you had your stories told at least once through that. And we really hope that by doing that, you were inspiring those other businesses who aren't yet doing sustainability to start to take it more seriously and to look to you as leaders. The other way we can inspire businesses is by creating platforms for your leadership. The best example from the year that's been is the Climate Leaders Coalition. How many of you have heard of it? Good. How many of you signed up? Quite a lot. How many of you came to the launch? For all of you, that's absolutely had an impact on how business in New Zealand is thinking about climate change. The conversations that we are now having are profoundly different. Rachel was talking to one of our members the other day, and what she told me is that they have used that statement as the core to their strategy for how they think about sustainability going forward. And they are a really big business with a significant impact. So be in no doubt that your ability to come together and show your leadership is inspiring other businesses. Our second pillar is to try and make sustainability easy and clear, and Alistair touched on that a little bit. I have genuinely lost count, and I should never have started counting because it's such a regular conversation. I've lost count of the number of times people say to me what a difficult concept sustainability is, that it's a concept with a very bad brand problem. I agree. That it's really difficult to understand and it's even harder to make real, especially for businesses who are just starting or who don't have the sort of scale that many of the businesses in the room do. So if we as SBC can find ways of making it simple, then we can help all of you go further faster. We do this where we can through events and workshops. Rachel ran science-based targets boot camps this year, and they were delivered in collaboration with WWF and Enviromark. Alison's run tech talks on issues as varied as digital disruption and social enterprise. We do it through direct advice. We've just completed our biennial member review where we check who's meeting their member commitments. Yes, we do. And as part of that, we've given a whole load of you one-to-one advice about how your reporting is looking, where you're doing well or where you could go further. And we'll be launching our report about the trends that we found through that process in the next month or so. We create tools which are designed to make sustainability easier. We started working with directors last year, and many of them had questions about the way that they could best understand how their businesses were doing on sustainability. It's a very different challenge as a governor to understand how your business is doing on this than for us who are in it in the operations every day. And so Rob, who's leading that work for us, pulled together a list of questions that directors could just ask as a way of interrogating things that they might need to know to understand, given that most directors aren't experienced in sustainability. Our third pillar is around the idea of creating fellowship and belonging. In our member survey, more than half of you told us that networking opportunities and SBC events were what have been most valuable for you over the past year, and we'll certainly do more of that in the coming year. And that's really good. But we think fellowship and belonging is about more than that. It's about feeling part of a community of positive change. We've had a couple of moments this year where we've really felt that sense of fellowship and where it's helped all of us be able to go faster. We saw that in the Climate Leaders Coalition, and we've seen it in the work we've done with directors. And we really want to be able to create more moments like that. So really open to your thoughts about how we might do that, what you look for when it comes to fellowship and belonging. Come and have a chat, because that's something we think we're going to need to keep working on. And our final pillar, which is kind of where we set our floor, is how do we make sustainability the norm and then unavoidable? Under this pillar, we focused our work on the opportunities where, as members, you're already meeting standards. And because you meet member commitments, that's things like reporting or measuring your carbon and reporting on that. So over the past year, we've worked with NZX and the FMA and IOD to start thinking about how we can start to raise that floor. And we'll do more of that as the opportunity arises. So we think we've got the strategy right, but always keen for feedback. But it still requires a little bit of that Alexander the Great. It requires us to have some new ways of coming at the problem. So we have some core principles that we use inside the team to inform how we work. The first is impact. We don't want to run projects or create tools or do workshops just because they seem like a good idea. We want to know that they're having impact, that they're valuable for you and they're helping you go faster, or they're having a real impact on the challenge that we're trying to tackle, that they're helping us somehow move the dial. Environmental and social issues are often symptoms of an underlying structural system that needs to change before we can make progress. They are adaptive rather than technical leadership challenges. Those of you who are on the Sustainable Leadership course with me know exactly what I'm talking about. Nice to be able to use that new language. I'm looking around for some of our leadership friends. So our ability to have impact is only as good as our understanding of the barriers you're facing, including things like the practices, the culture and the norms, the policy and the institutions, the things which are getting in your way. And it's only as good as our ability to create the interventions which also can address those issues. So, as an example, one of the things that you told us through the member survey is that you are most concerned about changing consumer behaviours. And we all know that long-term change on sustainability is going to require consumers to do some things differently. That's why we have a stream of work focused on consumer decision-making, and many of you will have heard Alison speak about that earlier. So she's exploring the opportunity for us to localise WBCSD's Good Life Playbook as something that we may be able to use here to help all of us understand our consumer context better and how they're responding to sustainability, but also to think about how we might be part of changing the behaviour of consumers so they are more sustainable as well. That's the kind of impact that we want to be able to have. And we can't do it by ourselves. That's why collaboration is absolutely central to our project approach. That might mean bringing members together and co-designing solutions. And I know Kate and Rachel have done that in various areas in climate. Kate on the Platform for Action on Climate and Emissions, which launched this year, and Rachel with the Climate Action Groups, and also with the Sustainable Development Goals Conference. But collaboration is also about more than partnering. I have hilarious conversations on a regular basis about what collaboration means, and so we take the view that collaboration is the idea that we're working together to deliver each other's goals. It's not just a partnering thing, it's about a being together to try and help both of us go further. And that's a lot easier said than done, and I talked a little bit about this last year. Great collaborations need high trust between participants. They take time to build, and the thing we're learning is it takes real skill to create the conditions that foster a great collaboration. Last year I talked about how much we're learning about collaboration. I told you all that we're learning probably as much about what not to do as what to do. I suspect that's probably still true. But we think collaboration is so important and such a necessary capability that we'll keep having a go, and we keep hoping that you'll put up with us while we try new things to see if we can find ways of getting better at this, because we think we're not just building our capability but yours as well. In fact, we think collaboration is so important that Rob, who leads the work on our Sustainable Development Programme, worked with Catapult to make sure we've got a whole module on collaboration in our Sustainable Leadership Programme, because it's one of those skills we're all going to need to find ways of getting better at. And it's this sort of capability building that's also a really important part of the way we work. We've learned that leadership is absolutely critical for sustainability. For so many of you, you're not just delivering sustainability, you're really trying to lead change. And being successful at that takes more than just sustainability technical knowledge. It's about influence, it's about resilience, it's about insight. And that's why we have a Sustainable Leadership Programme, which incidentally, the team and I are actually doing this year. That's because we know leadership skills are really important and that we all in our team need to continue to build our capability. And our final focus is on telling stories. I've already talked about how central that is to our strategy, but we know storytelling is a really critical feature of how we change systems, that the stories we tell have impact. And it's part of the reason we were so excited to have Sinead join us today, because there's not really anyone else in the New Zealand market other than the media who tell stories as well as you do, so really looking forward to hearing from you. Being strategic also means that we need to be able to look ahead. We use the combined insight of our members, our advisory board, who we basically take through the equivalent of a materiality process. We tap into WBCSD activity and what they're doing, and we use our member review process to understand what we are going to need to be focusing on in the next 2 or 3 years. What came through really strongly in the member review and in the member survey is that sustainability in the supply chain and non-financial reporting are absolutely key priorities for all of you. So we're starting to develop some activities in those areas now. What the combined insight of our advisory board and WBCSD told us is that within the next 3 years we need to be starting to work on the future of work, which is part of the reason we've got the exciting panel we have today, on how the system shares wealth, which kind of goes to Alistair's point about inequality, and Te Tiriti, or the Treaty of Waitangi, which came up strongly as something that as businesses we will be starting to work to think about. So really excited to hear from those people on the panel for the future of work, because we know there's already some really thoughtful work being done by members, and part of our opportunity is to share that. And finally, I want to finish by talking not about all of our project work, because that's what the session before this was to do, but I want to talk about our social impact project in particular. This project has been dear to my heart. I was involved with it before I joined SBC while I was still at Vodafone. And so I've been through probably 3 or 4 iterations of the project by now. And I think it's really important that we have a project that's focused on social impact. So many people hear sustainability and they think environmentalism, and that's really unhelpful for all of us because we know it's a lot broader than that. As many of you know, and some of you will have heard Jodie talk about this earlier, we've had this project going since 2013. And we did a lot of work at the beginning to understand where we should focus, and the decision was made that we needed to focus on the most excluded and disadvantaged young people, because that's something that many of you told us you were most keen to work in that area. And for many members that really made sense, because what we're hearing from you is you're in a war for talent, unemployment is really low, you're looking for new pipelines to talent, and we've got a government who's telling us it might be harder for you to get workers from overseas. What we've learnt through our work with our members is that sometimes your recruitment processes aren't, how should we say, optimised for young people. And that you're not necessarily reaching the broadest group of young people and the talent that you might want in your business. How many of you ask for a driver's licence as ID during your recruitment process? And have you considered, for this generation of young people, many of them don't see a need to get a driver's licence. Many of them can't or don't have the resources to do so, and so you create artificial barriers through something as simple as that. For the businesses who were directly involved in the project, we worked, and Jodie in particular, worked really closely with them to understand the sorts of barriers that they were facing. Initially, what we learned was that you don't try and do social impact around recruiting young people with sustainability people. That's obvious in retrospect, but at the time we had to learn it the hard way. So Jodie spent a lot of time building relationships with the HR people in various businesses. She worked closely with them, and what we did was started to pull together the insights and the case studies and the tools, and today we're launching the Employer Toolkit, which captures a whole bunch of that insight. But what we've been most surprised by is how hard it's been to make progress in this area. We know that you all genuinely want to have an impact on a social issue. The number of you who come and ask me how you should be doing that is pretty high. And you're pretty interested in the idea of recruiting the most excluded and disadvantaged young people. But the challenge has been, we think, that that's a really hard thing to showcase. Although the social impact on it is high, it's a really difficult story to tell. And for many, it's still a priority to have a nice marketing message as well as some good social impact. And the other thing we think we've learned is that it requires business to go out on a bit of a limb and take some risks, particularly when you're starting to think about young people who are already not very like most of us. But if you think about young people who come from very different backgrounds, they can seem quite alien, and it becomes a really difficult challenge to overcome our own bias. So we think it might be time for us to start asking ourselves how sustainability is brought to life through our human resources functions. Because if we want our businesses to be the best for New Zealand and the world, how do we do that through our recruitment processes? For us, we'll be starting to think about this through the lens of the future of work. And as we start to explore what SBC can uniquely do in that space and what the sustainability lens is on it. Today signals the end of this phase of our social impact project, and I really want to take this moment to thank Jodie for all of the work that she's led with you and for all of us. Jodie is based in the Hawke's Bay and runs her own social enterprise, which is having enormous success with particularly the group of young people that we've been trying to reach. She told a story earlier about one of the young men that she worked hands-on with and who has this great job at Z, and that he is living a better life as a result of one of our businesses being prepared to take a risk and employ him. So if you are interested in making a difference in the Hawke's Bay through your recruitment processes, make sure you grab Jodie today. But with the greatest of thanks, Jodie, we'll miss you. So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for being members. On behalf of the team and I, it is really our privilege to work with you. And we'd love to hear your feedback on our strategy, how we're planning on working, and what you'd like us to be doing more of for you. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.